When Giovanni Bertone founded his design and engineering company just over 100 years ago, not even he could have known just how many classic designs would emerge from Gruppo Bertone's studios. Cars like the Countach, the Miura, Lancia's amazing looking Stratos, and Alfa's achingly gorgeous Montreal, they were all gifted to the world by Bertone. And nowadays, it's not just supercars that they design, but also trains, planes, even crash helmets. And for one very wealthy individual from the UK, they'll even design you a one-off version of Aston Martin's Rapide, if you ask them nicely enough and have the bank balance to match. The Jet 2+2, as it's officially known, although most folks call it the Aston Martin Rapide shooting brake, was first shown at the Geneva Motor Show this year, and it was inspired by the Jet 2 concept car that Bertone built back in 2004. That's the gold car here. Based on the regular Rapide, the Jet 2+2 uses the exact same running gear as its donor car, which means it has a 470 bhp V12, but from the rear doors backwards, it's been completely redesigned. And in the flesh, it looks beautiful, especially inside and especially in the rear. And for some extraordinary reason, the good people from Bertone let me drive it just recently. I am frankly terrified of driving this vehicle on the road. I mean, it's a beautiful thing to look at, and that's predominantly why we've come to Bertone to have a go in this car, is really to look at it rather than drive it properly. But I am actually driving this on the public road now, and as I say, I'm terrified. I mean, this thing's worth, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 million pounds, and there is only one of them in the entire universe. Every side turning just feels like a disaster waiting to happen. However, having said that, it's actually really rather a lovely thing to drive. One of the most amazing things about this Aston Martin shooting brake Rapide by Bertone, which is I think what it might end up being called, although its owner, Barry Weir, wants it to be called the Jet 2+2. But anyway, one of the most amazing things about it is how fast Bertone made it. The Rapide donor car was dropped off at Bertone just before Christmas last year. And yet they got it complete, built, ready to be shown for the Geneva show in March. And not just at the end of March, but at the beginning of March. So that's 3 months to turn this thing from a normal Rapide into what it is. Bearing in mind that normally when Bertone would do a job, they would say, do some kind of a styling exercise on a Ferrari F430. They'd basically have a Ferrari F430 delivered to the factory, and they'd take everything off it. They'd take the thing to pieces. They had to take this to pieces, but they realised they then had to put most of it back together again. This is 70% Rapide. And to do that within that time scale is incredible. I don't understand how they did it. I guess one of the biggest compliments of all that you could pay to Bertone and the work they've done on this car is that it looks really natural. It looks like a car that could easily have been made by Aston Martin. So on the road, it doesn't feel a great deal different from a Rapide. I mean, it steers pretty much like a Rapide. It changes gear via the paddle shifters, pretty much like a Rapide. It rides pretty much like a Rapide. And no, I am not going to throw it around on the road to see if it handles like a Rapide. Not when it costs 4 million quid and there's only one of them. It's nice to drive. It's very nice to drive. Just like the Aston Martin Rapide. Still sounds really rather tasty. Goes well too. I don't think it's that much heavier than a standard Rapide. they're not actually sure of the curb weight. They haven't put it on the set of scales yet. They're not really concerned about that sort of thing at Bertone. So up front here, it's pretty familiar Rapide architecture, but you do need to climb into the back seats to realise where all the effort and the money and the bespokeness has gone with this car, because when you get back there and you start to have a look at what they've done, it is just beautiful. And not just because there's a bit more headroom in the back, which, let's face it, the Rapide needed. Just the craftsmanship that there is on display back there, and the pretty radical difference in style, because they've really heightened the rear haunches of the car, which give it this lovely kind of dart-like profile, which really works. Can you imagine how wealthy you have to be to turn up to a company like Bertone and to say to them, good morning, you see that Aston Martin Rapide? Well, I'd like you to make me a completely bespoke version of that, and I don't really care how much it costs. In fact, here's my checkbook. It's got no numbers written on it at the moment, but if you could come back to me when you're done, that would be great. I think that is deeply stylish. I think this car is deeply stylish. So maybe the key question, having driven this very lovely but one-off version of the Aston Rapide, is, will they make any more? Or is it really just a one-off? At the moment, the jury's out. Aston Martin likes the car a lot, by all accounts, as does anyone who comes into contact with it, seemingly. In light of which, it would be a shame, would it not, if Aston decided not to make a few more. All we can do now, I guess, is hope.